Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Cetacom video, we're going to be discussing the compute cloud for the Xbox One, as well as a little bit more on ESRAM. This actually comes to us from two separate interviews, so we're going to be just throwing it all and lumping it into one video, just because it makes a bit more sense. So, I'm sure many of you are aware of the Xbox Live Compute, or it's going to be a derivative. It's going to be utilized and based on the Windows Azure platform, which of course is a huge cloud computing system which Microsoft built to pretty much rival things such as the Amazon services or Rackspace. Titles like Forza Motorsport 5 as well as Titanfall are going to be utilizing it very heavily. For example, for dedicated servers, for AI, and so on and so forth. Now, the purpose of this is to basically offload things which in theory would be very taxing on a CPU, put it on the cloud, and with the abundance of the compute power, things such as AI, in theory you could have many times greater AI than what you could on a local console, simply because of the amount of power that's available. However, there's always been these worries, these concerns. What happens if the cloud falls over? Let's say your internet dies. Let's say, their service restart. Let's say there's a virus. Let's say something gets hacked. What happens? And obviously this is based on a game-by-game basis. However, at the GDC Next conference, there was an on-demand compute power for games session, and this was being headed up by Xbox Live lead programmer manager John Bruno, and he was talking and said, and I quote, "Once in a while, rather frequently actually, the host OS will require an update, meaning the physical machine is going to get rebooted, whether your code is running or not. That's a problematic thing for a game, as oftentimes in the middle of a multiplayer session, we've worked very hard to overcome that, but that's not to say that we've actually been a reality in every sense. So what about a title that requires the cloud? In this respect, and he says, I can't answer that. I don't know what the guys over at Titanfall have built into their game. It's up to the developer. If they want to rely more on the XBLC services, we're happy to provide that. We do provide a platform to then persistent data, but that's up to the developer to utilize that. So is this anything to worry about? Well, the bottom line is servers have to go down. I think what's probably going to happen, and this is pretty early on, but I imagine they're going to probably have made a routine and a way to actually do this where it's only emergency maintenance. It's not like your achievements or whatever are going to go bye-bye. It may just toss you out of a game while a server is restarting, or a possibility is that it will transfer you to a different server. So in other words, it says, okay, server A is going down, the next game we're going to transfer you to server B, because they could write that. Now, in case you're not exactly familiar with what a host OS is, they're not actually talking about let's say your system is the only, let's say you and your buddy Tom are playing an online game, and let's say it's just you two playing, just to make things really simple. The host isn't the actual virtual machine that you're playing on. The host is the actual main operating system that's controlling all of the virtual operating systems. Now, if you're not too familiar with what I'm exactly talking about there, you can check out my video where I go into a lot of detail on this. It actually shows you just how Azure and all of those applications work. And to get to it, you could type in virtual machine on the server, or you could type in something like Windows Azure, and you'll have a lot of information popping up just about that. So it's not anything particularly hugely to worry about. I don't think that you're going to have your sessions constantly bombing out every 5 minutes. Obviously, there's going to be something that Microsoft are going to be working on, because it wouldn't look very good on them. But there you have it. There have been a couple of reports already on the internet, of course, that this is something to be extremely nervous about. But I don't really think that we're going to have sessions where your connection is just going to suddenly go down every 5 minutes or something ridiculous. Anyway, let us discuss, my friends, the next one. And this comes to us from Xbox One developer. Their name is Capy Games. That's CAPY, and they were discussing ESRAM. Now, ESRAM has basically become pretty much the creation of Satan in the media right now. I'm sure many of you are aware of what it is, but I'm just going to go into it just to reiterate, or maybe for the 2 or 3 people who don't, everyone else can kind of recite along with me. But it's a very small amount of memory. We're talking 32 megabytes, and that's utilized to offset the fact that the Xbox One is using DDR3. Anyway, in regards to the ESRAM, some developers have concerns, let's go with that, that it's going to be a hindrance in the title. They are working on a next generation game known as Below. I'm talking about Capy Games, of course. And they've actually been discussing this. They actually released a small quote, and by small I mean just a couple of lines, but we'll go into it anyway. Look, we're not pushing the polygon counts like a lot of the big devs. We're likely not taking the hardware to its breaking points with Below. It took us quite a while to make our way through all of the documentation, but we've really enjoyed working on the Xbox One platform when we've had no ESRAM bottlenecks. End quote. So that's a pretty short quote, I agree. So basically they're saying, I mean, you can read between the lines here, and the lines are pretty massively spaced, so you're not exactly getting a lot of information. But it does sound like there's a lot of optimizations and so on, and a lot of work that they are basically putting the devs through. Now, I'm sure the PlayStation 4 doesn't exactly come with a 2-page leaflet that says power on and here's how to install the drivers. I'm pretty sure it's not that simple. But I'm saying that obviously they've given, Microsoft are obviously coming with a lot, or giving, should I say, a lot of the documentation. Now, we do know that a lot of the tools were still fairly early on the Xbox One. So as regards to the ESRAM, it obviously depends on a per title basis. For example, Crytek with Rise, or let's say another title that's really pushing the system, is going to have much bigger bandwidth requirements or memory requirements, simply because of the amount of textures, the polygon counts, shaders, whatever else they're throwing into the title. So obviously, this is one thing I've been stating for a long time. You cannot judge everything evenly, because even, let's say, these guys said they had ESRAM problems, they are also not a big developer. Therefore, the problem is, you can't just say, well, gee whiz, Studio A, their game looks considerably worse than Studio B, so why isn't Studio A's title running as well? And the problem is, of course, it's just the amount of money on optimization. It's nice to hear that ESRAM for once isn't causing a huge bottleneck. I don't particularly concern myself with small indie titles, though. I mean, it's just like, it's good. However, it's a very positive thing that not all developers are going through it. As I said, it's probably going to be dependent on the engine, what they're doing with the game, and so on. What I'm really curious about is when they're going to start to utilize local compute, because yes, the Xbox One, as we discussed earlier, does have the cloud, but for things which require a on-frame computation, or very quickly, not say 100, 200 millisecond delay, that's not exactly ideal. So I guess we're just going to have to kind of wait and see on that one. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.